e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, castles, bishop e7, rook e1, d6, d4, d3 works just as well, ladies and gentlemen. What we have here is the Berlin. Black has great drawing chances against this with white's play here in this position. And what we'll see is that there is no concise victory at all. This is not decisive, and we have a very long and grueling play ahead of us before we will get any sort of advantage here. In fact, just like over here in this position, the famous Berlin draw, after castles, the knight's going to take on e4, shoot the pawn up towards d4 in the center there, orient to capture the bishop, and then takes the pawn, going to capture the bishop, kick the knight back towards the center, takes, en passant, and we shuffle back and forth. Same reason as why this is likely a draw in this position here. The reason is neither player will make a concession in order for the game to go on, and one of them has to in order for the game to go on. Dead, drawn in this position. Let's think about this. There are two open files. There's no tension in this position. Black has both of the bishops, as we can see here. So it's not looking really all that great. And then, so for the famous Berlin Endgame, if you've seen it, after here, takes, you can take bx c6 or you can do dx c6. This has been done 8 times in the database, and this has been done thousands of times. Obviously more popular. Maybe there's reason to that. Takes here, knight's going to move here. Queen runs down, takes with the king. Could no longer castle over here, right? However, are things really all that different than we saw before? h3 is a great move. Knight to c3 is a great move as well. Rook to d1, giving a check. Obviously still going to be a great move nonetheless. This is a draw. At one point in time, the players will have to make a concession. And that's not how you win a game of chess, by making concessions, right? So you're probably asking now, why would we get into this situation? Why would white play for this? Why would anybody just play for this if it's just a draw? There has to be some sort of way out of this. And if you are thinking that, then you are correct. We have e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, all in the same. Now, instead of castling, what we do here is we play d3, the anti-Berlin. White's only way to try and play for a win in this position, especially at the top level. We'll see very many games like that happening. Bishop to c5, c3, castles, d6, knight on b to d2, a6, kicking the bishop back to a4, bishop a7. Now this is basically where the opening ends from the top line. There are several different things that we can think about here. I'll briefly go into them. If you want to know more about that, then check out this video here. H3 is the top move in the database, and it is the top move on Stockfish. Basically, at a very high depth, it really thinks that that is the great idea to prevent a pin here in this position. So that makes us think that at some point in time, maybe h6 for black is looking just as good of a deal after we unpin this bishop, which may happen with knight to f1 after, say, rook to e1. Of course, we have b5 coming out in this position. We could easily go to bishop b3. However, we're going to get attacked by the knight, so bishop c2 is going to be the move there. And that choice, this bishop has to come out at some point in time and get nice and free, right? So that's going to happen as well. Maybe this knight ends up oriented over towards this way. This knight ends up over here. We can strike in the center at any point, of course. Now, of course, to say also maybe after b5 we have a move like a4. Maybe you could argue that that would be an undermined, overextended pawn structure there in that situation. This is essentially the basics here of the anti-Berlin and where to go. I have a lot of different lines written down here in my opening book, and each one of them probably has this move order happening in a different configuration. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at masters who have played this very recently in the Toronto Candidates of 2024.
Stay hydrated. Use code CHESSFORALL for 10% off all of your Dubby Energy purchases. We've got Hikaru versus Vidit first from the candidates. e4, e5, going to have an anti-Berlin, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, d3, bishop c5, c3, castles, d6, knight on b to h3. So it's actually the fourth most liked move by Stockfish under rook to e1, knight on b to d2, and a4 respectively. So Hikaru is already asking Vidit a question. What do you know about this opening outside of the main line? Moving the knight around. See, what we're seeing now is just the move order that I talked about earlier, just happening pretty much in just a different configuration for the most part, right? So it's completely fine. It's completely drawn here still, and really there's just nothing really to fret about yet. We're not really in an intense, decisive game yet. D4 is a really, really strong move here in this position, I believe, because now this bishop is actually getting threatened. It's not actually on a7 like is typically. So this is actually maybe a little bit more of an initiative winning move now that you could per se take here afterwards, right? So what Vidit comes out with is a nice old c6, attacking the bishop. Both bishops are attacked. Now, what Stockfish really likes here is takes and then takes, right? So takes, knight's got to move again. You've been touching the knight a lot, so you did get it to its destination. However, on g6, like you wanted it, but you have been moving it a lot. So was that really all that good? I don't know. It says white is up just a little bit after that exchange anyways. So what's going to happen actually is Hikaru plays bishop to d3. And I don't know if he didn't see takes, or he didn't like it, or whatever. I'm not a super GM. I can't even begin to fathom that. But of course, then the bishop's going to back off as well. Takes, and takes here now, right? Now you can't really take this bishop, because if you do, I kind of feel like it's a little bit weak overall for you to find as a human. But now with my tools of Stockfish here, it does look like the best move. And it's going to settle in that way for sure. So definitely not. The only thing that leaves you in a winning position is to take the bishop. And that is not what Hikaru plays, probably because of the ideas. I mean, I just don't know how rational it is for a human to find how to protect against that weak of a king side. Seeing how what is about to happen in this game, of course. Does pretty much the exact same thing. Now it's defended by the queen though, so maybe it's just a little bit better. It kind of is interesting though. It's some interesting stuff for sure. Gonna attack the bishop, comes in with the knight, realigns, all that stuff. Now this is actually where I believe Hikaru's position really starts to fall apart. When he stops the progression of the f pawn for black by launching his own forward, attacking the knight, all he really ends up doing is severely weakening his position, of course. So that is just a completely bad situation to be in. PP on the PP, put pressure on the pinned piece. And the game is just unfortunately over, because after this check here, the queen is lost. Because you can either go here or you can go here. Either way, this comes down. Check. And it's just not looking too good from here. Yeah, you got the knight and whatever, but guess what? Queen's here too. So this is where Hikaru resigns. And this is some of the stuff that we got in the anti-Berlin over here. Now we have Gukesh and Firouzja, which is the future of chess, in my opinion, and your opinion as well, probably, because it's the opinion of the people that we watch. So, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, d3, bishop c5, castles, and here's where we get our first kind of change up. This is, I believe, the third most popular move at this point, rather than playing d6 here, right? So, takes, okay? We keep going. Knight on B, knight D2 now, not on B to D2, because there's no other knight. We're going to move backwards. Here is an interesting position where there are 90 times where the bishop has gone to A4, and there are 2 times where the bishop has gone to C4, which is very crazy. So what we end up getting into now here is a series of moves that are required to be found in order to play on in this position. Now, out of the 2 games that have gone this particular way, it is 100% win accuracy for white, and so that's not a very, very good pool of data. However, it is worth knowing for sure. Food for thought, obviously, here. We want to keep this bishop on this diagonal, I believe, is kind of the idea of not going to A4. I suppose with this, we'll have to push here at some point. I don't know if we really want to move back here in this point in time. Castle's moving queen up, coming back. Okay, so yeah, maybe we don't. Typical Berlin, right? Now we're looking a lot more like what we did, just not 2 knights on the board. Now it's just bishop pair, knight and knight. H3, that's an important one. That was a really good move coming out, striking the center. Now you can't take because it's defended by the knight. Got to back off. Really good find to connect. You got to get this bishop off of its starting square at some point, which is really, really important. I believe that was his intention with bringing the knight back. Get the bishop out. Exactly. Yes, yes. Now this is a tough position here because it's hard to defend this and defend this while you're defending this as well. So takes, you have to go here or you have to go here. And if takes, then you have to take with the knight. I would not take with the pawn. I do not believe. Inaccuracy, just trade. Not a bad idea, especially when it's damn near a draw still at this point, right? Did not en passant, because you'll lose some material there. Opening up the king side is really, really crazy, and it takes a lot of intuition, I would say, for sure. And it takes a really long time. They almost shuffle pieces, right, and repeat. It takes a very, very long time. Gukesh is just slowly breaking through here. And this is where he starts to chip away at the defenses with just a little bit of an advantage here with a miss. Knight to E6 was the winning move for Firouzja. Takes. Now that pawn is undefendable. Capture it. Start and consolidate a little bit. Rook's on the 7th, right? Ooh, you just got to get it off and then march, right? Get that rook off the board if you can. Rook's on the 7th, still becoming very, very popular principle. And that is where Black resigns because the 2 pass pawns are inevitable and you can't stop it. You can't defend your own pawn here on A. I got to stop pointing at the screen. You can't see when I do that. You can't defend this pawn while it's promoting, while stopping these pawns from promoting. And that's just the truth of it. So, yeah, what a big win for Gukesh. And I got to say, I'm going to publicly come out and announce that I am Team Gukesh for 2024 of the World Chess Championship. Say what you want about Gukesh. Say what you want about Dingley Ren. I think it's going to be a lot of really, really fun chess. I think they're both very great chess players, and they're definitely better than you and me, probably combined. I will see you punks later. Happy chess.